What's up, everyone? This is the Go Long Podcast here for a little 2022 NFL Draft recap edition with my main man Jim Monis reporting remotely. Although Jim, we had ourselves one hell of a time at the 2022, this second annual draft extravaganza live at Hamburg Brewing Company. I think we had about 25 people, might have been up to 30 virtually joining us for that. Exceptional questions. We had a Falcons fan in there, the usual Packers and Bills suspects. We got some good Giants talking, which we're going to absolutely get into on this podcast. But man, that was fun, wasn't it, Jim? And they were there to see you. You're the one that had the stories from the draft room, and by God, did you deliver? There's a reason that it's not on the podcast feed. I should say that. It was recorded, but it was not published.
So once again, yes, it was a blast at Hamburg. It was so good to be there. What I liked was our first draft extravaganza last year was a home run, especially highlighted by the Justin Fields trade up, for the Bears. And that was a great time too. It's hard to always, duplicate, that sequel, the next movie. I feel like we did. I love the crowd I love the guys we had on Zoom. Like they really brought it with some, like you said, some different teams, but their questions are always like challenging. And to your credit, I should thank you for your help, but I get a little loose. I get a little loose on those extravaganzas. I like to let it fly a little bit. And we had our Mount Rushmore of shitheads. And, we had some newcomers.
That alone should probably get people to become, paid subscribers to go along. You get the exclusive Jim Monis Mount Rushmore of shitheads in the NFL, which had a few, in the first annual, and it definitely expanded for the second.
Expanded, and we do a T-shirt with it. Every year would be different. So this year's can't wait for the 22 shithead Mount Rushmore T-shirt.
Right, shitheads of the NFL. You didn't disappoint, I'll say that.
No, and boy, Hamburg didn't disappoint either. They took great care of us after the show as well. After the show,
we might have been the last people to leave watching the draft, so thank you to the good employees at HBC.
Yeah, we closed it down, and sometimes you need to leave a little early. Got to give people a rest sometimes. we were enjoying ourselves as fathers. That don't
a rare cutaway. That's right.
It was nice.
But yes, the Louis were going down smooth.
I stuck to that juice box.
Oh, the juice box boy. Yeah.
I got into that. That was not what I was expecting from that. I remember I had it I think I only had it once last year, but I was pretty impressed with it.
All right. 2022 NFL draft. Let's get to it. I mean, you kind of alluded to it. Last year you had drama, you had quarterbacks. Everybody thought Mac Jones was going to be the third overall pick to San Francisco. Right. They go Trey Lance. You had the Justin Fields trade. It was just nonstop drama. And oh, by the way, Aaron Rodgers floated out earlier in the day that he wanted out of Green Bay. So it was kind of like, you've got like Ozark or The Wire, or you have must-see TV. This year was more like, I don't know. Was it just like popping on C-SPAN for the night? It wasn't that exciting. Yeah. But there's a lot to get into still.
No, that was kind of, both of us were kind of like, it's just not, it didn't have the drama that some, previous drafts had that we're used to and that we like for the draft. But I think when you go back and recap it and kind of take a step back and look at it and see what teams were trying to do. And what was interesting to me about the quarterback was, everybody was pretty much saying that this class wasn't your surefire, go get that guy. And you know what? Everybody was stuck to it. They didn't panic. The Steelers they had a feel for him. There's always, you never know. Like I said, every team's different. Obviously Pittsburgh, Pickett, and they felt good about him and took him. But all the talk about the Willis and, Corral, all those guys, nobody reached on anybody. Like they stayed their ground. If they didn't have the high grades, they didn't panic. I credit the personnel guys. They really showed some, calm in their game.
Which is not what I expected, right? Even in Bob's series, when you had these scouts, shredding the quarterback class and
Right.
comparing it to 2013 as one of the most just abysmal quarterback classes they've ever seen. I think that there was still this underlying current of, yeah, but teams are going to panic. Like there's going to be a Carolina, an Atlanta, a New Orleans. There's going to be a team that just jumps the gun and drafts a quarterback. And you're right. I think that here's what I'll say though, Jim. I think teams were correct to like
Or
not overdraft. I think Sam Howell probably should have gone earlier in the fourth round. That surprised me.
yeah, I knew
Overall,
that was
but if history has told us anything, it's that the NFL screws up the quarterbacks. They just do, one way or another. A Dak Prescott falls, or Russell Wilson falls, or somebody's drafted way too early that they should have never have gotten drafted. So it's not like year in and year out these personnel departments are proven correct. Like they knew what this class was. I don't know. I mean, who knows? Maybe Desmond Ritter in Atlanta blows up. We don't know.
there's
That's
no
kind of the
question
fun
that
of it.
I think that's the best part is these guys now, the pressure on these guys, now they can come in and they can just actually learn the offense. They don't feel like, hey, I got to get in, I got to win. The expectations have already been set by where they were drafted. The team has, like Atlanta, look, I'm sure they're excited about it. They have Mariota, who he's had some good quality seasons, he just can't stay healthy. And there's just no consistency, but he's played for Arthur Smith. So there's familiarity there. And so they had a plan in place. And I got to give Fontenot, the GM, Terry Fontenot, give him some credit for having a plan in place. And now they got a guy that they can work with. So yeah, think if we always talk about EJ Manuel, or what if Marcus Mariota was a second round pick? These guys were second, third round picks. We're so hard on these guys. It's not their fault where they were drafted.
The expectations completely change. If Carolina panics and goes Malik Willis or Matt Corral in the first or second round, they end up taking Corral in the third round. It's just different. You take somebody earlier, and rightfully so, there's a push to get that player onto the field.
And the other thing was, like, you brought up Carolina, it made me think about it, but that owner, you feel like Matt Rule's definitely feeling heat. And there had to be some good discussions there that said, hey, we don't see any of these guys as the answer. And that owner, he didn't lay the hammer down and say, take one. He trusted his personnel and coach. That's something to be said for that. Just, right or wrong. I mean, Terry trusted, McDermott, Whaley, myself, when we said we just didn't feel good about taking a quarterback with where we were at. And we had Tyrod and blah, blah, blah. But Terry supported it. And you know what? He got rewarded for it.
That was another great part of the extravaganza. Jim Monas here relived that entire draft for everybody. And because I think there was a lot of unknown as to who's really running the show here, who's really making decisions. That was really interesting when you got into that.
Yeah, I like the question because, and I'm like I said on the extravaganza, hey, I'm okay with admitting when we made mistakes or how we made decisions, right or wrong. And we did some good things too. And that draft, hey, proud of that. If that's our last draft we ever do, most likely that's a good one to go out on.
So what impressed you? I mean, let's both like just go with who we think had a good draft then in a
it's really funny for me
draft.
I know it's so funny that I'd rather
the grades are in, Jim.
It's almost, the grades might be worse than mock drafts. And
let's not get too crazy.
Okay,
mocks are pretty bad. Enough. But what's worse than all of that combined is the television production that is the NFL draft. It was unwatchable, Jim. I mean, that was unwatchable.
We couldn't get into it.
No, I mean, just what it's become. I mean, the NFL has turned it into Bravo television.
It's too much.
Line it up with the Real Housewives of something. I mean, there was just so much bullshit, pick to pick, nonsense. WWE wrestlers and magicians and the former Vikings player rambling on, and Wayne Newton. Plastic Wayne Newton gets up there and says a guy's from Mississippi when he's from Memphis. I mean, I just
So
miss waking up on Saturday with my dad as a kid, watching Paul Tagliabue announce the pick, Mel Kiper breaking it down. I mean, this is the NFL though, right? They want to appeal to this broad audience and bring in new fans. Well, guess what? The hardcore fans are gonna just look online to see who gets drafted because it's just
oh, it's well, you can't. But the thing is, you must not watch the Real Housewives
it's recorded
because,
on our YouTube TV. My wife watches it all the time.
well,
I
I'm a
I have
huge
not
fan of
divulged.
yeah, okay, love Beverly Hills, Jersey are my two.
Oh, so you're all in.
Well, all I was going to tell you
You
was
sicko.
it's so much better than the draft. You can't don't say the draft. Don't say it's
Well, the
like
bar is low at this point, though.
okay, fair enough. But it and I'm not trying to. It is those shows are better. That draft was like the shows are good if you like that style. Everybody has their own style, Tyler. I can't do football all the time.
You got to be able to turn it off. I get that, but
That was always I
people
think we
watch the
talked about
draft
it
to turn it
before.
on. I mean, they want the
Well,
substance. They want some meat on the
yeah,
bone. There wasn't much
no,
meat on the
it was.
bone with that
I
draft.
will say, I wanted to talk to you about let's back to the draft though, because and I know you wrote about it. You put it on Twitter about Joe Douglas and the Jets, and we've talked about Joe on the show. I was in the Southeast with him, and
Oh yeah.
I always love seeing all these guys I've talked about before getting their chance now as GMs. We all kind of started as area scouts. Joe Schoen, Joe Douglas, Brian Gutekunst. We were all together, all in the same rooms. Jason Light, I can remember all of us were sitting around in rooms together. And now those guys are GMs. It's cool to see. And Joe Douglas, a good story about him. If we were at like Wake Forest on and I'd walk in and he's sitting in the film room and, usually you start around 8:00. So, you try to wait for everybody to get there, but I'd come in with my Dunkin'. I always had Dunkin' Donuts coffee. You get the coach's donuts, get your coffee. Well, Joe always had Dunkin' Donuts as well. So the fun thing about him, like why Joe is such a good guy to me was like, we'd be sitting there all day, Wake Forest, and say next day, hey, where are you headed tomorrow? I'm shooting down the road, going to hit, North Carolina tomorrow. Hey, I'm going to, and Joe would be like, hey, I'll bring the coffee, and he would show up and bring Dunkin', and then next day we might be at Duke together because we were on that little path. I would pick up the coffee, so stuff like that. That's what goes down on the road with scouts. You do have those guys that you might not talk players at all. You might just talk football in general, like about your team. Oh man, we played terrible this week, whatever. We got to get better. We missed on this guy, talking about drafts, but you don't really get into the guys you're watching. But anyway, I was happy to see the Jets pull that off because I want to see what they can do with if that quarterback, and we've talked about him, but if he can take that, like I said, he panicked last year. He didn't see things well, but you got to just give him time because there is ability there. And I love the fact that they're just getting after it. Like
I want to talk about
playmakers.
both New Jersey teams, Jim. I mean, let's start there with the Jets. First of all, with Joe Douglas, obviously GM for the Jets, and this was his third draft. You forget that he did the
Yeah.
first one with Adam
It's
Gase.
only his third draft, and he's got a franchise. They got to let this franchise, Wilson play out. So
Yeah.
it feels like Joe's been there longer than that.
So with their draft, I just feel like it was a GM's dream, and we poke fun at GMs at press conferences saying, "Oh, it just fell perfectly," but it really did. It could not have gone better for the
Really
Jets.
good though.
It really couldn't have because you get Sauce Gardner with your first rounder, Garrett Wilson, the scouts that Bob talked to, I believe it was 17 or 18. They have him as the best receiver in the draft, and
Right.
I mean, I'm no scout, but you watch his film, and it's just the kind of plays he makes are the plays you need to make in the NFL.
I agree with you.
He was a D1 basketball recruit. His dad played in the NBA for a hot minute. I think he finished as like Davidson's fourth leading scorer. He's got that in his blood, but just boy, he's not that big, but he plays big. It's a great pick there. And then the one downside was they weren't able to get Aiden Hutchinson didn't fall to him. They didn't get a pass rusher with one of those two high picks, but one of them kept falling, right? Jermaine Johnson just kept trickling and from 15 to when did they get him? 26.
Late.
Joe Douglas said that they were calling every single team and like literally every single team to try to move up to get him. He was a top 8 player on their board. That's pretty specific to make up. I believe him.
I believe him.
And to get him where they got him at that value, I mean, you're talking about 3 immediate difference makers. And oh, by the way, they tried to get back in for a 4th first rounder to get Brees Hall.
That would have been awesome.
They don't get him. They're probably up all night, pissed off about that, just wishing that they even got more. And then they just get him on day 2. They trade up and they get him.
The pass rusher is going to be really interesting to watch because Mark Ross on NFL Network, I know he loved him too. And you just don't hear, there's certain people that like, we like Bob, Mark, you're certain people that you listen to and they're like, man, that was a steal. And I agree with you. I believe Joe on that because that is exactly how it happens. You make your pick, all of a sudden, when you see it, I would call it in striking range. Like when hey, he's dropping. It's like every single person that has a phone in front of them, it's automatic. All right, you call, they're picking 18, you got 19, you got 20, you got 21. You just start calling, boom, right in order. Because the first call is always, hey, you guys, you interested? Yes. We'll give you, we have this pick, this is what we're giving, we'll call you back. It's the same thing every time. Like, okay, hold on, I'll call you back. Then you look, everybody's doing their work on the point system and talking about, you like it, call them back. Yeah, we'll do it. Done. It can be that easy. But yeah, you call every team in front of you.
That's what
surprised me. We did that with Sam.
I didn't know it was that maniacal.
Yeah, it is. It's funny. But
there was a moment with Joe Douglas where like when it was finalized, I mean, the Jets Twitter account put it out there themselves and he hangs up the phone. He says, "We're on the fucking clock." And then Robert Saleh comes over and gives him a big bear hug. "We're on the fucking clock." I mean, that is an adrenaline rush that you live for as a scout, as a GM, as a coach. Like, I mean, we're at the draft is so stressful and you miss out on so many guys, but to be banging at the door like Joe Douglas was, pick after pick after pick, and finally get through. I mean, you can see he doesn't really seem like a guy who just gets excited all the time either. His press conferences are pretty laser beam. He doesn't really say a hell of a lot. But in that moment, that emotion was pretty cool.
That's why he was an offensive lineman at Richmond. He was one of those guys, from what everybody told me, that doesn't say a whole lot, but he's coming for you as an offensive lineman. So I'm not surprised. And those guys seem like they have that chemistry that we always talk about on the show. And you see two guys seem natural with it and not fake.
Yeah.
Because you can tell the fake handshakes and the real ones that, hey, we talked about this. We worked at this. We had this we had this plan in place. And that's the release. Like, holy shit, we pulled this off. So that is that to me is what makes the draft. I 100% agree with you. Those are the moments that make the draft.
And here's a head coach and a GM that, they're just right now, they're just names on a list, the latest Jets people to come through the system and lose a lot of games and fail. Like, it's an uphill battle for them in the AFC East when you got to still deal with Belichick. You've got an MVP candidate in Josh Allen. Oh, by the way, hello, Tyreek Hill and Mike McDaniel and the Miami Dolphins. But
the good thing
was a big moment. It could have been a breakthrough moment for that team.
The good thing is you're really dealing with which of those quarterbacks of those three, Tua, Wilson, and Mac Jones, who's going to take that? Who's going to be the best out of those three? And then is that guy able to push Josh Allen ever, to make the Bills scared? That's the two steps they have. But all those quarterbacks need developed. The funny thing is with Wilson, like he already has enough pressure on him where he was drafted. And then of course, everybody just says, wow, they nailed the draft. So now everybody's going to be like, all right, it's on you now, man. You better get better because we have a good draft. We took you where we took you to take the next step. I love that they didn't just like draft offense, like just to load up Wilson. They went for who they believed in because that head coach, that's a defensive guy. So to get the corner and the pass rusher, two most valuable positions on defense,
DJ Reed in free agency was a biggie. I mean, they're really banking on that secondary taking
No,
a
they
leap.
no, they made some moves.
I mean, in Brees Hall, God, I
Well,
mean,
that's a great spot to take.
that's a perfect
Great
spot to get a
spot.
running back who could be the focal point
Just
of your offense.
right. Consistent, good player. Consistent, good. You know what you're getting with him. Those are the best guys.
What's your read on Zach Wilson? Then I know you did a little work on those
I
quarterbacks
did.
a year
I did,
ago.
and I really, really thought he played poorly. I mean, I didn't hide it. He was bad, like really bad. Like I don't want to bury a guy yet like that, but he was bad. He didn't
I mean,
see
that's the
anything.
thing.
The
As
game
great as everything seems to be for them with the draft, with
pilot. He
Joe
was way.
Douglas, with how they're built,
Yeah,
it all comes down to Zach Wilson.
it's all going to come down to him. The game was too fast for him. He didn't see anything. He didn't see it quickly. He didn't make good decisions. He wasn't able to unleash what you saw. Like everybody knows he has the ability, but I think he has a major, major step to take. But it's hard. Like, I don't want to write a rookie off. I don't like doing that to those guys. I got to give him some time, but he didn't play well. I mean, it was concerning.
I think you were looking for signs. Josh Allen didn't play well as a rookie. His completion percentage was like what 52.
I
They
always
won
said this
6 games, but
with
there were
rookies.
signs that he was willing to drive it down the field.
You want to see those guys at least improve, especially towards the end of the year. Like, man, it was rocky. It was bad. It was rocky in the middle. Hey, he showed some signs. Trevor Lawrence, Zach Wilson, man, it was. They didn't really show. They were pretty much played that same the whole year. I mean, they were not good. And like I said, that you see that, but Mac Jones got way overhyped, like way overhyped, for being like the greatest quarterback ever after that tornado game or hurricane in Buffalo that I'm still angry about. But he didn't even throw a
3
pass.
solid pass attempts that game, Jim.
But the point is, pressure is on Zach Wilson. He's got to get better.
He does, and that's what's wild about this too is I'm guilty. I wrote a story about the Jets. I'd go along, and I mean, phenomenal draft. You're finding cornerstones for your team. Just there's a reason to celebrate what they just did. But as I referenced in the story, this is probably, at least in the moment, it feels like this is as big of a haul as the Jets have had since 2000, 22 years ago.
Damn.
When they had 4 first-round picks. Sean Ellis, 12th overall, 73 and a half career sacks. Solid. John Abraham, 13th overall. Obviously they let him get away to Atlanta there, but you're talking about, a potential Hall of Famer, 133 and a half sacks.
Hit 2 for 2.
Chad Pennington, 18th overall. And if you really look at it, Jim, in the AFC East, probably the best quarterback this side of Tom Brady, with the Jets and the Dolphins.
That's a hit pick.
Yep.
That's 3 for 3.
And then Anthony Beck.
That's how it's just simple.
27th overall. You get a tight end.
He's
Anthony.
a head coach in the XFL.
That's right.
He's one of the head coaches in the XFL.
That's right.
And I worked with him. He was our tight ends coach in that AAF league when I was out in San Diego, and I was the director of personnel.
Wow.
And Beck
He's
was our
really
tight
good in
ends
the media too. We should get him on here.
Oh, we're going to talk about that. I'd love to see if we can. I got to talk to the XFL and see how they feel about it. But I would love to get all those guys on. We have some really fun guys to talk to. But Beck is awesome. Like,
that's great.
His son's a true freshman. Just started at Iowa State.
Man, that stuff makes me feel old.
How about you?
Like all these Elams.
I know.
But then they get Lavernius Coles in the 3rd round. How's this for career numbers for Lavernius Coles? 8,609 yards and 49 touchdowns. You forgot how good of a receiver he was.
You do.
But here's my point. It should have been a historic draft that just turned the franchise around. And who went 199th overall that year? Tommy. And he just haunted the Jets and everybody in the entire league for the next 2 decades.
That's a good story. That's
so
funny.
It's kind of like as great as things are. If you miss at quarterback, nothing else really matters.
It's funny. So after every draft, you sit there in the draft room, and on the board you have everybody by team, and you sit there, and all the scouts just sit there. You have a beer, and you go through each team like, oh, that was terrible. Bad draft. I guarantee you every team does it. It used to, and when I say it's not just one beer, it's your release. I mean, it's like the work is done. But I wish we had a camera in the room for the Jets if they were celebrating that night and they went through the Patriots draft. Like, oh, Brady, Brady, he won't ever. We're fine. We had the best draft in our division.
Did you see him with his shirt off?
He didn't even start at Michigan. They probably went through all of it, and there he wipes out the whole draft.
Man, and that's the thing. I mean, you kind of make your bed with Zach Wilson even more with a draft like this. I mean, I know it always comes back to 2014, but like it's like you double down on EJ Manuel with
clearly
that trade. Like, when you do stuff around the quarterback, you're doubling down on your belief in that quarterback.
Unbelievable. We talked about it the other night, but yeah, we should have taken Khalil Mack. No doubt. We should have traded up for him. Like, yeah, we did the right thing on going up. Get Mack.
But you said as well, like, what would that have done?
It wouldn't have done anything. But if we were aligned, if we had the right, if our GM and head coach and we were synced up for the future and really planning for the future and things were in place, yes, we should have taken Mack. And I don't, like I said, I don't think it changes, but it shows you that team is not panicking and how they have a plan. I really believe that.
And also, I mean, we talked about it before we hit record, but like, if EJ Manuel is entering the NFL, we talked to EJ about this on this podcast. If he's entering the NFL as a third-round pick with the potential to maybe start a few years down the line,
it's just not as rushed
where his career goes.
Yep. You're not as critical. It makes a difference. It's like Robert Meacham. I remember Robert Meacham in New Orleans. I bring him up because I scouted him and we took him late first round. Not like a high pick. I forget where it was, but he led our team the year we won the Super Bowl. He led our team in touchdowns, but like people kind of almost said he wasn't like that great. He wasn't what we thought he would be, maybe, but he was a huge, fast downfield receiver that if we would have taken him in the second round, great pick.
It wasn't that bad for you guys. I mean, he almost had about 3,000 career yards, played 6 seasons, 25. But you're right. In big moments, he made some pretty big plays from what I remember.
That's how I agree with you on that. He had that in him. But he wasn't like the down and in, down out route runner and consistent. I thought he would be a little bit better with that. And he never really took. And then look what happened to him when he left New Orleans. He didn't do anything. The Bills wanted him bad. With Mario Williams, they went big. They were trying to make a splash. It was Mario and Meacham was going to be their splash.
Well, let's touch on the other team in New Jersey before I forget. I mean, we've got some listeners, some readers that followed our Giants series back in December when the ship, was hitting the old iceberg there for the Giants. And it's a good thing that they bashed right into that iceberg, Jim. And
Tyler, it's like
it was bad. Seriously, there were not many lifeboats, and I think that was for the best for those New York Giants.
It was a truthful, harsh reality for Giant fans and possibly some people that work there that may have reached out to you, but it was a harsh reality because it was true. And they have a head coach and GM who are aligned, just like the other team in Jersey. Should
note too, if people are listening to this right away, I mean, unless you didn't know, Chris Pettit, director of college scouting, reportedly he's out. It was a pretty big.
Well, Kyle O'Brien as well. They let go. Who I know those guys pretty well. And Kyle was a decision maker as well. Like he was on the upper side, of the scouting. So Joe Schoen is not wasting time.
Pettit's been with
I'm
the
sure
team since '05.
who Pettit.
Right. And it's true. I mean, we wrote about it. I think he was in part 3 primarily in our series, but central to a lot of issues and problems there internally. Not very well liked by some coworkers, to put it mildly. But it's one of those moves that I think the writing is on the wall in a lot of ways, where new people come in. The big question was like, and this is where I think it's a sign that the Giants are going to win with this crew, or at least turn it around from where it was. Didn't really know, like, all right, who on the front office staff, and we've talked about this, has ingratiated themselves to ownership. Like, who's immune from being removed? That is really a part of the problem, and he was a part of the problem there. But it was hard to tell if he had that immunity. And I think this tells you Joe Schoen, Brian Daboll, like this, it's a new sheriff in town, and out with the old, in with the new. Probably not going to see the owner's brother, removed from the masthead on the front office chart there. But it's probably not going to happen. But I think there's reason for optimism, and it's crazy because it's like, as good as these drafts are, it also wouldn't surprise me if both teams finished dead last in their division again. It wouldn't be a shock, but I feel like things went about as good for the Giants as they could have as well. And I want to get to their second round pick, because that's the debatable selection there. That was really interesting. But you start with Thibodeau, Neal, premium positions, pass rusher, and somebody that's got to block those pass rushers. They needed them. There's some risk involved with Thibodeau. If you read Bob's stuff, I mean, there's concern about just the way he carries himself. But if you hit on it, I mean, you might have gotten the best player in the draft.
Pass rusher, tackle. I mean, you're hitting like value. You're getting value, and if you're correct on your evaluations, you couldn't have done a better job. But the best thing that you just said is so true. The Jets and Giants, we don't know about their quarterback. Like it could be the most pointless drafts. Like if those guys if they don't figure that situation out, both teams, these drafts don't matter.
Yeah, I think you just need that cohesion with ownership, at least with the Giants. It's kind of like everybody kind of knows this is it for Daniel Jones. I mean, they didn't pick up the option.
No.
And they just came in as GM and head coach, so they're going to get their own bite at the apple.
I would love to know, because I would love to know in Joe Schoen's interview if he told the owner, I think I don't want to pick his option up, but I think we should, let's find out what we have though. Not saying let's not get rid of him, but let's make him prove it, and let's work with him. And our head coach has done this with a guy, and let's give Daniel Jones. I personally, another guy I haven't seen any improvement on, year after year, but hey, we've seen it happen in Buffalo. And we're not trying to say he's going to be Josh Allen. We're just saying, can he take a step to be good enough to be your starter?
What's the famous quote? History doesn't repeat itself, but it does rhyme. Was that Mark Twain? Maybe. Might have been. I got to look that up.
I like it.
But I think that this is kind of what Joe Schoen went through with the Buffalo Bills ahead of the 2018 draft. I mean, after you and Doug were let go, Brandon Beane comes in. He brings in Joe Schoen. And all year they were scouting that quarterback class that you guys targeted at that dinner at Tempo with Terry and Kim. Like you knew that that class could have been
that was the plan. That was
the plan originally. But our buddy Matt Fairburn wrote a great story on it. He hung out with him as they scouted these quarterbacks, and
I read that.
Mike Silver just wrote a really good story at Bally Sports about it. But I mean, Joe Schoen went through this. Like they went nuts and trying to figure out of that crew of Lamar, Sam Darnold, Baker Mayfield, Josh Allen, Mason Rudolph, Josh Rosen, like who they liked. And now this is, nobody really knows, but there could be 6 quarterbacks taken in the first round. I've seen people are trying to set that over under. I think Kuiper and McShay were like taking the over on that. There's a lot more quarterbacks that could go early. It seems, in theory, headed by C.J. Stroud and Bryce Young. That Joe Schoen and the Giants are going to be going balls to the wall, scouting these quarterbacks like crazy to find, quote unquote, their guy. Daniel Jones is not their guy. It's a trial, 1 year. What else are we going to do at the position? They're not going to force a Malik Willis. They're going to just go with it and 2023 find their guy.
And that's your job as a coach. I mean, he's on the team and he's done some good things. All right, coach him, make him better. And that's part of coaching. And I'm sure Dable's up to that challenge. I do. You feel the other thing is Saquon Barkley could benefit from Dable. The Bills involve those running backs in the pass game. That's what Barkley does best. Get him the ball in the pass game and let him just run. Because he's not a great pick and slide runner. He really isn't. But he's home run.
I don't think they're that upset that there's some people that have a lot to prove on this year's team. I mean,
I'm telling you,
Saquon was like a generational, transcendent, like unbelievable, and he's just forgotten. Nobody talks about Saquon Barkley.
I think he's a good. I never thought but I always thought he would look like a really good, like I always call him, home run hitter. It's not his fault where he was drafted,
but they could get a lot out of him. I mean, really.
No, that's a value. That's a good thing to have. They have them using. No, I'm with you. I feel like there's some good things coming in with that Giants and Jets team, but it's all about that quarterback. But
what about Wan'Dale Robinson, wide receiver, Kentucky?
What do we know about him?
Third.
I gotta say, that's not a guy I knew much about.
I'm gonna pull up the exact measurements, but it was Bob McGinn's kind of his unsung hero of the wide receiver class that could sneak up on people. Yeah, here he is, unsung hero, 5'8", 179. So he's one of the smallest receivers. He's not really a receiver. They're probably viewing him as this hybrid. So they got Kadarius Toney, like you got the same player here, but he's their guy. He benched 225 more than any receiver 19 times.
That's incredible.
He's 179 and he benches 225 19 times. And he ran a 4.44. The shortest receiver, only 27 and 5/8 arms, but really productive. He transferred from Nebraska to Kentucky, and he had 1,000 yards. He was super productive in college, but they had an opportunity in the second round. I mean, there were more polished receivers available. It was definitely somebody. I mean, if you believe groupthink, it seemed like everybody viewed him as a third or fourth rounder. But that was the pick where Joe Schoen really kind of gambled and then stuck his neck out, and that's what we're gonna have to watch. If he hits on that, it's like, okay, wow.
That's a good point. That's a good point to pay attention to that one, because it sounds like, especially with that size, so he must have reminded them of somebody, like for a specific.
Isaiah McKenzie.
Well, I was going to go there with you, but I didn't know if you wanted to. But I mean, as far
as they really liked Isaiah, they would have just signed him to an insane amount of money. They didn't do that.
Money, right? Just come play with us. No, but that's how I look at that. Is they have a vision to take somebody, like they know what they want to do with him. Dable's like, I got this. So
yeah, that'll be interesting.
I can't. I'm with you. There's a plan. Once again, you can see these teams that have plans in place right now.
And here's the Dallas Cowboys' plan in the NFC East. It's to sign who Bob pegged as the scout's nightmare of the edge rusher class, Sam Williams, accused of some pretty vile behavior. The battery charges were dropped. Had incident involving a knife in high school. There's a lot of background there. Some of it's on our site at Go Along. If you go to edge rushers in the series. Some of it we may report on over some time, because I think he's from a pretty dark place. It was a gamble in true Jerry Jones fashion, where the Cowboys they don't care about off-field red flags. They really don't. They just don't care. And a lot of it blows up in their face. Once in a while they hit. But I just see a franchise and an owner just doing the same kind of stuff they've done for 26 years running and then some. 26 without a Super Bowl berth, but I don't know. I just have a hard time seeing a team coached by Mike McCarthy, owned by Jerry Jones, making the same kind of mistakes they always make, punching through. I mean, Philly. Say what you want about Howie Roseman, and I don't know if I would have given AJ Brown 100 mil 4 years, but look, they whiffed at receiver with I see your Whiteside and Rager.
Yeah,
Now,
he's been there. Howie's been there long enough where I mean he's gonna have a million misses and some good hits too. Like your percentages, you're gonna do it.
Survivor,
I'm
Survivor.
just once again, we always come back to the quarterback. And so you're now invested a first round pick last year in a receiver, and then you go out and pay Brown. And you have a quarterback who I personally just don't see him being a high completion. Like I don't see him being the more attempts he's throwing a game, the better. Like he seems like, he can do
Yeah.
some things. And and we've talked about, I love his toughness. Like he is so tough. And obviously that's the team respects that. Man,
But
if
the
you can't
athleticism
consist,
only takes you so far. It's got to
oh,
be a
for
bonus.
sure.
It can't be the foundation.
No, you got to find a way to. So, I mean, your investments in these guys now. So,
Yeah, it's I'll flip it on you, Jim, and I want to hear your perspective on this. And we'll have a story up tomorrow, just kind of whipping around the entire league with the draft. But the Tennessee Titans, my first inclination was kind of everybody's when they traded AJ Brown. It was like, what the hell are you doing? You draft this guy, you're clearly better with him than without him. Just pay the man. But then you really look at the kind of the nuts and bolts of where the franchise is. I mean, yeah, so AJ Brown said that they offered him only 16 mil a year with incentives that went up to 20, and that I think he would have done 22, something like that. But whatever it is, it didn't get done. But they could have made it work. Like John Robinson and Mike Vrabel could have made the numbers work, but to do it, they would have had to kind of push Ryan Tannehill's money down the line, which locks you into Ryan Tannehill beyond 2023. I think they can get out of that at 2023. And you might have to do the same kind of stuff to other contracts. Taylor Lewan, you're kind of like doubling, tripling down on other players, especially the quarterback, where I like Tannehill, but I mean, clearly that Cincinnati playoff game at home, you're the number one seed. He held you back. Like you
he's
lost.
not. That's
So you want to have, do you really, is it worth keeping AJ Brown at the expense of, okay, we're going to lock in with the quarterback to move that money around? I think that the Titans are smart here because they can kind of keep one foot in and one foot out. They can compete in 2022 with Derrick Henry. Remember, they didn't have him for half the year last year, and they still found a
fair.
way to win games with Mike Vrabel's coach of the year. So you still can compete, and yet you're looking to the future a little bit. I mean, you drafted AJ Brown's replacement with the pick you got from Philly. He's kind of, was it Traylon Burks? He's kind of like AJ Brown in a lot of ways. You draft Malik Willis in the third round because why the hell not? Sit him for a year or two. Who knows? Maybe you can develop him. I loved it. On second thought, I was like, you know what? This makes a lot of sense. Plus, you didn't get locked into the contract to Brown, as good as he is. Um, just kind of keep plugging, keep thinking long term. Green Bay kind of operates the same way, right? They kind of do the same thing. Although I think Devontae Adams wanted the hell out of there. Um, but I don't know. What do you think about that? If you're the Tennessee Titans, how would you have handled your star receiver wanting more money, being willing to stay if he gets that money?
I don't think they should be investing in receiver right now because I'm not a Tannehill guy, and we know what their team is. Like it's run the ball defense, right? I mean,
Yeah.
that's what you are. So once again, they're aligned at the top. Robinson, Vrabel, they get along. Like they're in this. Like they must feel good. Ownership must feel good. I'm not saying Obviously, we know anybody can get fired any time, but hey, they must be believed enough where they didn't feel pressured to do that. Like, we just have to keep him. There may have been some thought on that and said, look, if we're not in a spot to do it and we can get, we can get this, we can do this,
Yeah.
and we can develop a quarterback.
All is
So
not lost for them too. I mean, they did get Robert Woods this offseason too.
that team's trying to win. Like, they believe they can win a Super Bowl with Tannehill. I mean, they believe that. I don't know. I just don't. I'm with you. I just don't think Tannehill will ever. Like, I feel like there's always going to be that game where it's just like,
Yeah.
but man, that team has some. They're tough. I mean, they always play. I mean, their whole team just. I like that.
They kind of did go for it last offseason too, right? They gave Bud Dupree the big money.
Yeah.
Another contract I'm not thinking of. I mean, they re-signed Kevin Byard at a historic deal a couple years back. So they
they're invested.
yeah, they're a grimy team to your point. I mean, they're gonna have to pay Jeffrey Simmons. They're gonna win. I feel like the way that they were able to just kind of stay in it when everybody was hurt and just they're losing more players than anybody in NFL history. I have the metric right in front of me, but when you talk about players lost to injury, I'm pretty sure no team had ever lost as many as they did last year. That's why Mike Vrabel was coach of the year, including, the guy who's throwing the team on your back and Derrick Henry. So yeah, I think they'll be fine. I don't think that was a bad maneuver to deal
I agree.
a receiver there. Flip side, and you've got some teams that did pay the receiver. I mean, the Bills, it could have gotten to that point on draft day, right? If they didn't pay Stephon Diggs, I wonder if push would have came to shove a little bit on
And
draft
this would have
day.
been, yeah, because this would have been the draft and that goes back to what we were talking about, though. You're just spinning wheels then.
But you're willing to do it because you believe in Josh Allen a little bit more than the Titans probably believe in Ryan Tannehill. A little bit.
100%.
Anything else from the draft?
No, we
Stand
didn't. I don't
out,
know how much
good,
more
bad, or
I
ugly?
wanted to touch on, I because I didn't know a lot of these guys, and I read about what Bob was gathering about the corner the Bills took. Just about the softness, and I'm excited to see this because there were mixed reviews. There were other guys that didn't say that about him, but a couple people said it. I think it's something worth paying attention to. Sean McDermott, that's a no-no for, like, his number one rule with corner is they better tackle and better be tough. So I'm excited to see who was right on that one, as far as, is it that guy, is he soft? Or did the Bills say, hey, no, we did our work. This guy's not soft. And whoever Bob was talking to, they were wrong. But I'm curious to see that, because I just know how much Sean loves that toughness.
I'm paraphrasing. I can't remember exactly what Brandon Beane said, but he definitely alluded to it in his press conference, talking about Kyrie Elam. And just looking at the scouts' comments now, go along td.com. It's up there as a post, the headlines, what the scouts say about Bill's first rounder cornerback Kyrie Elam. And I'll read a few of them here. AFC scout, I think he's the best corner. Good size, super athletic. He can do everything athletically as far as speed and recovery. He's got poise. He has the ability to play the ball. His cover skills are exceptional. If you're going to knock him a little bit, he's not a great run support guy. He's not real aggressive or strong. So that was probably the highest mark. Then it gets a little more incendiary. NFC scout. He's a soft player. When you use that word,
That's what I'm saying. That's, to me, that comes up in draft meetings. You just what you did. That's what happens. And I just can't picture Sean. I just can't picture him taking a soft corner.
Quote, he's a soft player, lacks the ability to tackle in the open field. Great kid, soft player, second round. I mean, everybody go over there to read. There's a ton of comments here. And here's an NFC scout, another different NFC scout. He's talented, not silky smooth in his movements, but he's explosive and he's a real good athlete. He plays with a lot of damn confidence and swag. He's got an excellent feel. He can run support, but he's less to be desired in the run game. He's one of those guys that says, quote, y'all go do that. I got a tackle. All right, let me jump down on the ground, end quote. His first round talent, it's where his mind is. So here's one more NFC scout. Quote, nobody cares anymore, but very, very, very marginal against the run, non-existent. He's got some real talent. But this is what he added. The same scout says he's more talented than Ahmad Gardner, who the Jets took fourth overall. So you've got a guy who, I mean, maybe supremely talented. Well, Deion Sanders didn't want to hit anybody. So that's the gamble you take. Like, they're going to have to schematically try to keep him out of those spots.
You don't have to be you just have to, you can't be a fatal flaw. You can't be a poor tackler. Like, you don't have to be nasty. Just get them down. That was always most of the coaches I've ever been. Just get them down.
But you have to have the desire. I mean, we were just talking about Derrick Henry.
Well, that goes
when you've
back
got this
to
runaway freight train coming at you. You got to stick your nose in there.
Just that's the point.
I'll say this too.
Go ahead. He sounds really talented though. That was the one consistent thing everybody's saying. Like, it sounds like this guy has some serious ability.
His dad was Abram Elam, who had picked 6 on Trent Edwards once upon a time. Uncle Matt Elam, safety for the Baltimore Ravens. Yeah, it's interesting. It might not matter. It might matter.
No, we just gotta wait and see. That's the fun part. Now we can actually that's something we can watch and really look for, and we'll see it quick.
But you know what I think of is a brilliant play caller like a Kyle Shanahan, NFC divisional round against the Green Bay Packers at Lambeau Field in the cold and the snow late in the game. You need a first down to win the game, and they call that run for Deebo Samuel. And they call it schematically for him to go directly at Jair Alexander. So Jair Alexander, it was his first game back from, I believe, a shoulder injury, right? Like, so he'd missed a lot of time with an injury that requires, he's in that moment. He's got to stick that shoulder in there, which, by the way, he's up for a contract pretty damn soon at that point. Are you willing to do that in that moment on 3rd and whatever it was, 3rd and 6, 3rd and 7? It was almost diabolical by Shanahan. Like, I'm going to send my tough SOB directly at your corner who we don't think wants to touch him. And he didn't. Alexander's one of the best corners in the game. He wanted nothing to do with Deebo Samuel in that moment. Nothing. Go back and watch it. It's awful. So at the end of the day, this is still a violent game. And you still have to be willing to hit and tackle.
You have to be willing. Yeah, that willing. That's it. Got to be willing. I have a feeling I don't know. I'm going to actually say if I had to bet who I think is going to be right, the Bills or the scouts that Bob spoke with on this guy, I'm going to go Bills.
Ooh.
I don't think Sean McDermott would draft a soft corner. That's why I'm saying it.
I'm going to agree with you because I've been very critical of Sean McDermott, obviously. 13 seconds, being front and center to that. If there's one thing he does exceptionally well, and it's been proven, it's develop cornerbacks and coach cornerbacks and put cornerbacks and DBs in the right position. Maybe outside of Levi Wallace guarding the sideline when he didn't have to guard the sideline to the end of outside of that notwithstanding, that seems to be one of his greatest strengths as the head coach. So overall, I feel like they'll develop Elam into being a starter. I mean, Dane Jackson isn't going to give up without a fight, but it was a position of need. It was a really good talent. You take
There's certain words when I hear guys talk like that, when you hear consistent, like with explosion, athleticism, cover, could be the best in the draft, debatable. Like, I love that.
Yeah.
That screams value. Like, that screams like there's some serious talent here. So I know, man. Bills. I mean, it's hard to doubt what they
Cook. Any thoughts on James Cook before we sign off?
I like what I just saw in that was my first real exposure to him, was watching kind of those clips. There's a spot for him for sure. That home run, I mean, I like it. I feel like I'm always partial to Southeast guys too. Florida, Georgia. I like that. So
A little underutilized. I mean, he wasn't even the starting running back for
oh,
Georgia.
I know. And that's once again, that's conviction. Like the Bills did some work on him that this is and I love that. That's scouting.
113 attempts for 728 yards, 7 touchdowns. So he averaged 6.4 a carry when he did get the
That's
ball.
pretty good. Yeah.
Caught 27 balls for 284. But still, I mean, he had the big game. Was it against Alabama? But other than I mean, yeah, I mean, they had Zamir White. He had more carries. They kind of split time, I guess. Uh, they have a vision for him, and I think it's going to be interesting to watch Brees Hall with the Jets. Here's the thing. I mean, the Bills kind of poo-pooed the mock drafts and people thinking they wanted Brees Hall in the moment. I think in Bean's press conference, he was going I don't know why everybody had this Brees Hall. That seemed to be a national storyline. If you go read Mike Silver's story at Bally Sports, that referenced he did a behind-the-scenes look, had access to the Bills draft process. He said that if they did stay at their pick and they didn't trade up for Elam, that Brees Hall would have been a consideration. So they could have drafted him there. Instead, they get to the second round, they trade down, they get Dalvin Cook's younger brother. It seems like they have this complicated role for him. They want to move him all over the field. Whatever you think about the Wonderlic, as Bob reported, he had a 6 on the Wonderlic. That's pretty low. Could mean nothing.
It could no, I've seen it go. I've seen it go. That you've done your work. Like I'm just telling you, they feel good about it. That Wonderlic that test can go. We've talked that thing into the ground. You do your work with the player. You let him explain what he's doing, what he sees when he's watching film. You'll know right away if he can handle, what you're going to try to teach him. So yeah, so the Bills, Jets, Giants,
hitting on all the New York, New Jersey ball clubs.
Only one has a quarterback so far. Oh yeah, we didn't really get into your Packers, but you know what? Maybe that's for another time.
Well, we're gonna do for everybody listening to this. I'm gonna do a podcast episode with Bob McGinn.
Oh,
so
there you go.
We're gonna hit on the Packers. And you know what the criticism? I hear it's out there. There's a few comments on some stories, but I think for people who haven't read Bob McGinn's work over the 38 years that he's done this draft series, they're a little unfamiliar with being bombarded with scout quotes. So we're going to definitely get into the value of that. I mean, you were a scout for a number of years. Maybe you can answer this for us. I mean, I think that, the criticism from like some people in media is, well, of course they're going to talk shit about a guy that they want to drop, or they'll pump up a guy that they want to go early. These are relationships that Bob has built up over the years. I think he knows, I don't think he knows. I know he knows who to trust, who not to trust.
Yeah.
And it's it's like anything in life. Think about everybody's profession. It's a relationship business. But we'll get into that. So, and I know there is some rough language on some of these guys, which I get, but hey, we're not NFL Network. Okay. This isn't state-run TV where a player's drafted and we all drool all over him every pick, because that's not reality. We want to try to live in a semblance of reality.
I'm telling you, as a scout for a long time, we put so much work into these players, and sometimes you don't get a chance to talk about, at length in your meetings about some of these guys, or you have more that you want to say, and so you just want to talk more. You did work on these guys.
The scouts I've talked to over the years, Jim, our podcast is pretty much like those conversations.
Yeah,
people just want to talk about football. They just want to talk
because we were lonely. Like we're on the road. Like we want to talk. Call me. I'm in my hotel again. Yeah, let's talk about him. I just saw him.
It's sad. I mean, you guys are living out of hotels and not with your families and such, but you just want to talk ball.
I don't want to go. I can't paint a sad picture. It's a pretty fun job.
That's a good point. You know what? That isn't a bad life. Back in your people's single days.
That's
on the road, having a beer, 18 of them. life is pretty
No
good. I take
negatives.
that back.
No negatives.
Very, very minimal negatives.
Everybody try to be an area scout as a single person.
Well, in my prime of my life in those early 20s, I was living in Northeast Wisconsin, Jim. So wasn't exactly a Southeast scout like you.
I started Northeast though. I started with my roots.
Yeah.
But I didn't want to leave that Southeast.
All right. Well, we mentioned it before. Our plan really is to get this podcast rolling. We're
I like
gonna
that.
fire
Yeah,
out more
XFL.
episodes.
I'd really like to see if we can get some coaches on. That'd be pretty cool.
And thanks for everybody for listening. We have our conversation. Talk to Talon Humphrey. That's on the feed here if you haven't listened. Fascinating guy. Gosh, I wanted to ask you about this, Jim, but Louisiana Raging Cajun D tackle. So he's actually going to Pittsburgh Steelers rookie camp. He's trying out.
Cool.
He wasn't drafted, but he told the story of his 1 year that he was at Florida International and he ended up getting kicked out of there. But he said that when he was there, like the tutors at the school, they just did everybody's papers and everybody's tests and did everybody's work.
Mm-hmm.
They literally go into these study halls and it's like, all right, here's my work. Do it for me. He's like, yeah, when I went to Louisiana, I went in this, went to see my tutor. I'm like, well, here's my work. And they told me they just got to help me out. They didn't do it for me.
Yeah.
I'm thinking that's Florida International. What's life like at Georgia, Alabama? Some of these big time SEC schools.
It's like that. What he said. There's no question.
Interesting conversation there. And we have a lot planned. So goalongtd.com. If you don't subscribe, we'd love to have you. Thank you so much for listening, watching, however you consume. Jim, we'll do this in the flesh, HBC, later this week when you are
Would love to.
childless. See ya.